I didn't grow up in a home with a lot of humor, so my parents were very serious, and I went to a school run by Irish monks, and you got spanked more often than you laughed. So you're welcome. You, yeah, Dave's been. I was interested in knowing. Dave worked for a long time in Allegan, and Allegan is where I came to do my first job. I really love Allegan County, and Dave's been a pediatrician and a teacher par excellence, having taught at the med school here for many years. I'm going to pass the mic on to him for his talk on nature of humor and what makes us laugh or not. Thank you, Dave.
Hello, hello. Oh, wow, this is good stuff. Where does this go? Yes. Well, I have a pocket. When I joined the club a couple of years back, I was told that the Torch Club was a group of people who got together to have a nice dinner and to listen to a presentation on a topic that maybe they didn't know a lot about, but were obligated to research and come back. And I think the Torch Club, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. Are you about to correct me? Okay, okay. Sorry, move. That it was established around the earlier parts of the 20th century as one of these numerous self-improvement organizations that thrived back then. So the inspiration for this talk was actually David Isaacson's talk last spring about dark humor. And I thought there's a lot to humor. As a matter of fact, after I get done with this, there is still a lot to explore in regards to the nature of humor. And so I didn't know much about the nature of humor, so I decided to research it, and I thought it was worth a talk. So I looked up what is a joke. A joke is a brief narrative that evokes laughter. Okay, that's not too exciting an explanation because I wanted to know why people laughed at a joke. And what makes people laugh at a joke is cognitive dissonance. You're hearing a story, you think you're going to understand the story, and then the story flips on you, and the surprise of the flip is what evokes the laughter. So that's what makes people laugh when you have a joke. So I looked up what are um, the earliest jokes. How can we fix this? The thing that makes you laugh when you hear a story that's actually a joke is cognitive dissonance. You're expecting to hear one thing based on the narrative so far, but when you get to the punchline, it is so radically different that you say, What the? And then you get it, and then you laugh, and you say, well, this is really funny. Okay. Looking up the earliest jokes, apparently the earliest jokes have been found on cuneiform tablets of ancient Sumeria. And one of the earliest jokes is there has never been a time in history when a woman has not passed gas while sitting on a man's lap. Okay, okay, all right. So they did fart jokes. Their humor had evolved to the point of an 11-year-old boy. Uh, on the other hand, it's possible that we have a lot to learn from translating cuneiform tablets, or possibly more to learn from the diet of the Sumerians. There was a joke that was supposed to be just as old, and that is A dog walks in to a dark room and says, "It is so dark in here, I'll take the first one." Okay. Um, Dogs have always been a part of human existence for thousands of years, so it's not surprising to find a dog joke uh, from 4,000 years ago. Uh, we still have dog jokes today. Guy walks into a bar with a dog, and the bartender says, "No, we don't allow dogs in here. You have to take the dog out." And the guy says, "No, this dog is special. This dog can talk." Rex, Rex, what is the part of the house that's on top that keeps out the elements? Roof. Out, out. No, forget it. No, no, wait, 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 wait. Rex, Rex, Rex. What's the opposite of smooth? Roof. Get. No, no, seriously. I just have to ask the right question. Rex, who is the only president to succeed himself in office 3 times? Coolidge? You have to have it's nice to have a sense of humor. People who have a sense of humor can make up jokes as they go along. They sense the absurdities of life, and as they see something, they'll tell a joke. I had a friend who was in the infantry in Vietnam, and he was involved in a firefight. And his best friend, during a lull of the firefight, runs over and jumps into the ditch beside him, and he says, and he said, "What's going on?" He says, "You know, it was true what they told us." And he said, "What? What? What did they tell?" He said, "It's not the heat, it's the humidity." My daughter has a real good sense of humor, and they're in the Navy and they're stationed in the middle of Tennessee somewhere. And we were all staying at this motel because they were setting up housekeeping prior to her husband being transferred down there. And you gather for the free breakfast. And so this lady says, "Why are you here?" And we told her why we were there. And I asked her, "Well, why are you here?" And she said, "Well, we're moving up from Savannah." And I said, "You left Savannah to move here?" And she said, "Yes, my husband's a pastor and he received a call." And my daughter says, "That's a call I would have sent the voicemail." And the lady did not laugh because Sarah uh, mistakenly uh, disparaged her life's work and her religion at the same time, which is why you have to read the room if you're going to be telling jokes. I'm not reading the room now. So you have to know your audience. Back in the late 60s, which I'm sure most of you don't remember, um, there was a joke where the guy rings the doorbell and the lady goes to answer the door. And he says, "I have a telegram for you." And she says, "Oh my God, I've always wanted a telegram. All my life I wanted to have a telegram. Could you sing it? I've always wanted to have a singing telegram." And he said, "I'm not a very good singer, and I'm not sure I can even sing a telegram like this. Not There'll be something extra for it if you can sing my telegram." And he said, "Okay. Your son was killed in Vietnam, doo-dah, doo-dah. He won't come home to see his mom all the doo-dah day." That joke would not go over well with my mom in 1969. So read the room. Where am I with this? Give me a moment here. We will do the concept of punching down and punching up. I know how many people are familiar with the concept of punching down and punching up because it's a pretty familiar concept. Punching down is when somebody makes a joke, somebody in a superior position makes a joke about somebody in an inferior position, lower on the social pecking order. We had a politician one time, and I think his opponent had a neurologic disease that expressed itself with involuntary movements, and he made fun of him by making these involuntary movements. That's punching down. Um, so, what kind of human being does that? Well, if you ask my wife, I would be one of those human beings because I like to watch America's Funniest Home Videos, which essentially is a bunch of punching down jokes. And she says, "Don't you ever get tired of seeing a guy get whacked in the nuts by doing something stupid?" And I say, "No, I never get tired of that." Making jokes about religion is neither, if I can find the jokes, Sarah could have made a better joke, but there are good jokes about religion. A man is on a desert island. He's been on a desert island for 20 years. He's finally rescued. But before he leaves, he's reluctant to leave without showing the captain of the ship around his island. And he says, "Okay, now here, this hut is where I live and where I sleep. And this hut down here is my workshop where I make the fishing nets and everything like that. And this hut over here, I want to show you this hut over here. This is this is where I go to pray. This is my church." And the captain looked over and he saw this tumbled down hut. And he said, "Well, what's that hut over there?" And he said, "Well, that's a church I used to go to." A man for 50 years has prayed at the Western Wall in Jerusalem. And because of his consistency, it came to the attention of the news media, and they sent a guy to interview him. And the guy says, "You've been doing this. You come at sun up, you pray all day, you leave at sundown. What is it you pray for?" And he says, "I pray for world peace." And the newspaper man says, "Well, how's that going?" And he says, "Sometimes it's like I'm talking to a brick wall." And I can be sympathetic with him because I tried to tell my son about playing Russian roulette, but I'm afraid it just went in one ear and out the other. After Adam was created, God realized he needed a helpmate. And he came to Adam and says, "I got this helpmate for you. She's stunningly beautiful. She has immense IQ. She can hold her own in any conversation you want to bring up." Wow. May cost you. May cost you a kidney, part of your liver, 3 fingers of your right hand, possibly even a testicle. Adam says, "What can I get for a rib?" But punching up is where it goes. It gets us by. That's why jokes about pastors and doctors and lawyers are so popular. Um, a young priest was going to visit one of his elderly parishioners, and she said, "Would you like a cup of tea?" And he said, "Yes, I would." And as he's being served the tea, he noticed a dish of peanuts, and she says, "Would you like some peanuts?" And he says, "Why, yes, I would." "You like these peanuts?" "Oh, these are very good." And she said, "I think so too. But since I lost all my teeth, it's all I can do to just suck the chocolate off of them." A guy gets a call from his doctor, and the doctor says, "I have some bad news for you, but I also have some worse news for you." He said, "Well, what's the bad news?" And he says, "Well, I just got your lab results back, and it looks like you only have 24 hours to live." Oh my God, 24 hours to what's the worst news? I forgot to call you yesterday. A man gets into a really bad automobile accident, and he finds out the guy he ran into is a lawyer, and the lawyer hits the bricks and he's yelling, and he says, "That was my new Porsche. You're going to pay for that. And look at my Armani suit, and it's ruined, and you're going to pay for that. And I'm late for this deposition, and you're going to pay for that." And the guy says, "You are so greedy, you don't even notice your left arm is gone. My Rolex." Oh, you may have heard some of these before. Man goes to the priest and he says, "My cat died, and I was really close to this cat, and I was wondering if you could do the service." And the priest says, "Well, no, I mean, animals don't have souls. I can't do a service for your cat." And he said, "Geez, I had $50,000 set aside for this funeral." And the priest says, "Why didn't you tell me your cat was Catholic?" A guy with a bunch of different symptoms goes to the doctor, and the doctor does an examination, and he says, "Well, boy, I'm afraid I got some bad news, and I got some good news." What's the bad news? Well, the bad news is you have something that's really complicated here. It's the treatment is going to be long, and it's going to be very expensive. He said, "Well, what's the good news?" He says, "I think I can make the down payment on that Lambro I've been looking at." A lawyer is throwing a holiday party, and during the holiday party, the toilet backs up. He calls the plumber. The plumber comes, looks at it, flushes it out. It's fixed 15 minutes. Hands the lawyer a bill for $400. He says, "We only did 15 minutes work." He said, that for an hourly rate, that's $1,600. That's more than I make." He said, "That's more than I made when I was a lawyer, too." Humor can also be a form of forbearance or resistance, which is another form of punching up. And for that, I'm going to go back to the humor of the Soviet Union and the humor of Nazi Germany. Stalin loses his pipe after a meeting, and he's outraged. He can't find it anywhere. He calls in his NKVD people and says, "I cannot find my pipe anywhere. Find out who did this." About a half an hour later, he's sitting on the sofa. He finds the pipe is in the cushions behind. He calls the NKVD guys back and says, "I found my pipe. It's okay." And they said, "Well, that's impossible. Three people already confessed, and two died while they were being questioned." A guy in the USSR, he orders a car. So he wants to know, when can I get my car? He's the guy on the phone says, "Well, do you have our latest 5-year plan in front of you?" He said, "Yeah, yeah, I got it." He says, "Now go out 2 years, and on Tuesday, June the 23rd, in the morning, you can come to the factory and pick up your car." And he says, "I can't do that." "How come?" "That's the day the plumber comes." Stalin visits a village to honor a hero worker of the Soviet Union. And he says, "How long do you work every day?" And he says, "I work 12 hours a day." "Well, if you worked for the Communist Party, how many hours a day would you work?" And he said, "For the Communist Party, I would work 24 hours." Stalin forgets what the guy does. He says to an aide, "What does this guy do?" He says, "He's a grave digger." A lot of jokes in Germany. See if I can find all of these. One thing about Hitler was, or at least the people who were helping run Germany, is that the humor helps as an outlet, as a way of forbearance. And so they allowed a certain level of humor in which the Nazi Party or he was the joke of some jokes. One of the earlier ones was their slogan was Hitler leads, the people follow. And the joke was that people would say, Hitler leads, we get what follows. Pretty tame. It's pretty tame stuff. But as the years passed, they got a little bit more biting. Let me see if I can put this in order. Hitler goes to visit an insane asylum. And when he enters the insane asylum, all the patients are giving the Nazi salute and yelling and cheering, Heil Hitler, Heil Hitler. And one of Hitler's aides looks over to the corner and he sees just two or three people and they're just standing there not doing anything. So the aide goes over and he says, you guys aren't cheering. And he says, oh, those are the patients. We're the doctors. Hitler was always afraid of disease and death. Um, so he went to a fortune teller. He wanted to know when he was going to die. And the fortune teller said, and it says, you will die on a national holiday. Oh my God, what holiday? And the fortune teller says, any day that you die will be a national holiday. Surprisingly or unsurprisingly, this joke really had legs because after the war and in Poland and Romania and other Eastern Bloc countries, this joke circulated because it was very easy to substitute anybody's name for, for the joke. And so that joke persisted. One more time. Give me a minute. The joke that finally broke the bank was that towards the end of the war in 1945, a joke was told in a Berlin nightclub. And it was Hitler asked Goering, how much food, how are we fixed for food? How much food do we have left? And Goering says, oh no, we're good. We're good for the next 7 months. And Hitler says, oh my God, that's great. We got to go out and tell the people. Goering says, the people? No, no, I thought you were just talking about you and me. That joke got the teller executed. There are sociologists who say that you can measure the um, depth of an autocracy by the kind of jokes you can get away with telling, which is lucky for us because we can criticize our government and tell jokes without any fear of losing our jobs or being prosecuted. Thank you.